The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of the Whitmore mansion as Elena Martinez quietly pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway. At 28, she had been working as a maid for the wealthy Whitmore family for 3 years, but she still felt amazed by the sheer size and luxury of their home. Crystal chandeliers hung from every ceiling, and priceless paintings decorated the walls like a museum. Elena had grown up in a small village in Mexico before moving to America with dreams of a better life. Working for the Whitmores paid well enough to support her younger sister's college education back home, but it came with its own challenges. The family was known throughout the city for their wealth and influence. Richard Whitmore owned one of the largest technology companies in the country, and his wife Victoria was a famous socialite who appeared in magazines and attended charity galas. But it was their daughter Isabella who captured Elena's attention most. The 16-year-old girl had never spoken a single word in all the time Elena had worked there. According to the other staff members, Isabella had been born mute, unable to communicate except through hand gestures and written notes. The family had supposedly consulted with the best doctors in the world, but nothing could be done to help her speak. Elena found this heartbreaking. She had grown up in a large, noisy family where everyone talked over each other at dinner time. The idea of living in silence seemed unbearable to her. Whenever she cleaned Isabella's room, she would see the girl sitting by her window, staring out at the gardens with a sad expression on her face. Isabella was beautiful, with long dark hair and bright green eyes, but there was always something lonely about her presence. The other maids, Carmen and Rosa, had warned Elena not to get too involved with the family's personal matters. They had been working there much longer and knew the rules. Do your job, keep your head down, and don't ask questions. The Whitmores valued their privacy above all else, and staff members who overstepped boundaries found themselves looking for new employment very quickly. But Elena couldn't help feeling drawn to Isabella. Perhaps it was because she reminded Elena of her own sister Maria, who had been shy and withdrawn as a child. Or maybe it was the way Isabella's eyes seemed to light up whenever Elena smiled at her while cleaning. There was definitely intelligence behind those green eyes, even if she couldn't express it with words. One Tuesday morning, Elena was dusting the library when she heard footsteps approaching. She turned to see Isabella entering the room, moving with the grace that only came from years of expensive ballet and etiquette lessons. The girl was wearing a simple white dress and carrying a leather journal that she took with her everywhere. Isabella walked over to one of the tall bookshelves and selected a thick novel. As she turned to leave, she accidentally knocked over a small vase that had been sitting on a nearby table. The crystal vase shattered against the hardwood floor, sending pieces scattering in all directions. Elena immediately rushed over with her cleaning supplies. "Don't worry, señorita," she said gently. "I'll clean this up right away. Please be careful not to step on any pieces." Isabella looked panicked. She began gesturing frantically with her hands, pointing at the broken vase and then at herself. Her face had turned red with embarrassment, and Elena could see tears forming in her eyes. It's okay," Elena repeated soothingly. "Accidents happen. Don't worry about it." But Isabella continued her frantic gesturing. She opened her journal and quickly wrote something, then showed it to Elena. The message read, "I'm so sorry. I'll pay for it. Please don't tell my parents." Elena felt her heart break a little. This girl was terrified of getting in trouble for something so small. "Listen to me," Elena said, kneeling down so she was at Isabella's eye level. "This stays between us, okay? I'll tell your parents that I broke it while cleaning. They won't be angry with me." Isabella's eyes widened in surprise. She wrote another note. "Why would you do that for me?" "Because you seem like a good person who made an honest mistake," Elena replied simply. "And because I have a feeling you carry enough worries already." For a moment, Isabella just stared at Elena with an unreadable expression. Then she wrote, "Thank you. You're very kind." Elena smiled warmly. "What's your name, by the way? I mean, I know you're Miss Isabella, but what do you like to be called?" Isabella hesitated for a moment, then wrote, "Just Bella. I've always preferred Bella." "Bella. I like that. It suits you better than Isabella." Elena began carefully picking up the larger pieces of the broken vase. "I'm Elena, in case you were wondering." "I know," Bella wrote. "I've watched you work. You're different from the other maids. Different how? Elena asked, genuinely curious. Bella paused before writing her response. You smile more. And you seem, I don't know, happier, I guess. Elena laughed softly. Well, I try to find reasons to be happy, even in small things. Like how the morning light comes through that window. She gestured toward the tall library window. Or how your garden smells like jasmine in the evenings. Bella looked toward the window, then back at Elena with interest. She wrote, You notice things like that? Always. My grandmother used to say that happiness is hiding everywhere, but you have to train your eyes to see it. Elena finished collecting the broken pieces and stood up. There, all clean. And remember, this was my accident, not yours. Bella wrote something else and showed it to Elena. Would it be strange if I said I wish we could talk more often? Elena felt touched by the request. Not strange at all. I'd like that too. From that day forward, Elena began to notice Bella more often during her daily routine. The girl would appear in whatever room Elena was cleaning, always carrying her journal and pen. They developed an easy communication system where Bella would write questions or comments, and Elena would respond out loud while she worked. Elena learned that Bella loved reading mystery novels and had read almost every book in the family's extensive library. She was fascinated by different cultures and had taught herself several languages by reading foreign books. She loved art and spent hours in her room painting landscapes and portraits that she never showed to anyone. Bella, in turn, seemed hungry for conversation and connection. She asked Elena countless questions about her life in Mexico, her family, and her journey to America. Elena found herself sharing stories she hadn't told anyone else, talking about her grandmother's wisdom, her sister's dreams of becoming a teacher, and her own hopes for the future. The other staff members began to notice Elena spending more time in rooms where Bella happened to be, but Elena was careful to always continue her cleaning duties. She didn't want to give anyone reason to complain about her work performance. One afternoon, while Elena was organizing the family's extensive collection of photo albums in the sitting room, Bella approached with a thoughtful expression on her face. She wrote in her journal and showed it to Elena. Can I ask you something personal? Of course, Elena replied, setting down the albums. Do you think it's strange that I've never spoken? I mean, really strange. Elena considered her answer carefully. This seemed like an important moment. I think everyone communicates differently, she said finally. You communicate just fine with your writing and your expressions. Maybe you just haven't found the right reason to speak out loud yet. Bella looked surprised by this response. She wrote, The doctors say there's something wrong with my vocal cords, that I was born with a defect. And you believe them? Elena asked gently. Bella paused, her pen hovering over the page. Finally, she wrote, I don't know what to believe anymore. Elena felt like they were approaching something significant, but before she could respond, they heard Victoria Whitmore's high heels clicking against the marble floor as she approached the room. Bella quickly closed her journal and moved to the window, pretending to look outside. Victoria entered wearing an elegant blue suit and carrying her designer handbag. She was a tall, thin woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and the kind of makeup that took professional artists to achieve. Despite being in her early 40s, she looked much younger, thanks to what Elena suspected were expensive cosmetic procedures. Elena, Victoria said in her crisp, authoritative voice, I need you to prepare the guest rooms on the second floor. We'll be hosting some business associates this weekend. Of course, Mrs. Whitmore. I'll take care of it right away. Victoria's gaze shifted to Bella, who was still standing by the window. Isabella, darling, you have your therapy appointment in an hour. Dr. Harrison doesn't like it when you're late. Bella nodded without turning around. Elena had heard about these therapy appointments before. Apparently, Bella saw a speech therapist twice a week, though after all these years, Elena wondered what they could possibly still be working on. Victoria left as quickly as she had arrived, her heels echoing down the hallway. Bella waited until the sound faded before turning back to Elena. She wrote quickly in her journal, She watches me all the time, like she's waiting for something to happen. Elena found this comment odd, but didn't have time to ask about it before Bella gathered her things and left for her appointment. That evening, Elena was finishing her duties in the kitchen when she overheard a phone conversation that would change everything. Richard Whitmore was in his study, which was located just down the hall from the kitchen, and his door was slightly open. Elena wasn't intentionally eavesdropping, but his voice carried clearly through the quiet house. "No, absolutely not," Richard was saying in a stern tone. "We've maintained this situation for 16 years, and we're not changing anything now. I don't care what the new doctor thinks. Dr. Harrison knows what he's supposed to do. Yes, the medication is still working perfectly. She shows no signs of breaking through. Trust me, if Isabella ever spoke, it would destroy everything we've built." Elena felt her blood run cold. Medication? Breaking through? What was Richard talking about? She moved closer to the door, her heart pounding. "Listen to me," Richard continued, his voice growing more intense. "That girl can never, ever speak. Do you understand me? Our entire family fortune, our reputation, everything depends on her staying exactly as she is. Silent. No, Victoria doesn't know about the calls. And she never will. This stays between us and Dr. Harrison." Elena backed away from the door slowly, her mind racing. What had she just heard? Was Richard suggesting that Bella's inability to speak wasn't natural? That there was some kind of medication involved? And what did he mean about their family fortune depending on her silence? She tried to continue with her cleaning duties, but her hands were shaking. Everything she thought she knew about Bella's condition was suddenly in question. If what she had overheard was true, then this sweet, intelligent girl was being kept silent intentionally by her own parents. Elena spent the rest of the evening in a daze, unable to concentrate on anything. She kept thinking about Bella's earlier question, "Do you think it's strange that I've never spoken?" and her comment about not knowing what to believe anymore. Had Bella begun to suspect something was wrong? When Elena finally went home to her small apartment that night, she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what she had heard. Part of her wondered if she had misunderstood the conversation, but Richard's words had been too clear, too specific. The next morning, Elena arrived at work feeling anxious and uncertain. She went through her usual routine, but she found herself watching Bella more carefully, looking for any signs that might support what she had overheard. Bella seemed the same as always, carrying her journal and communicating through written notes. But Elena began to notice small things she had missed before. Sometimes, when Bella was startled or surprised, her mouth would open as if she was about to speak before she quickly closed it again. And there were moments when Elena caught Bella looking around nervously before writing certain things in her journal, as if she was afraid of being observed. During lunch break, Elena sat in the staff room with Carmen and Rosa, trying to gather information without being obvious about it. "I've been wondering," Elena said casually. "Has Isabella always taken so much medication? I noticed Dr. Harrison prescribes quite a lot for someone so young." Carmen looked up from her sandwich. "What medication? I've been here for 8 years, and I've never seen that girl take any medication." Rosa nodded in agreement. "Me too. The only medical thing I know about is her speech therapy appointments." Elena felt confused. If Bella wasn't visibly taking medication, then how was it being administered? Unless it was being given to her without her knowledge. The thought made Elena feel sick. That afternoon, Elena was cleaning the kitchen when she decided to examine the family's food and drinks more carefully. She opened the refrigerator and looked through the various items. Most things were normal, but then she noticed something odd. There was a special pitcher of water that was always kept on the top shelf, and it had a small label that read, "Isabella only." Elena had seen Victoria filling glasses from this pitcher specifically for Bella many times, but she had never thought anything of it before. Now, looking at it with new suspicion, she wondered what might be mixed into that water. She was about to investigate further when she heard footsteps approaching. Elena quickly closed the refrigerator and pretended to be wiping down counters as Victoria entered the kitchen. "Elena, I need you to make sure Isabella drinks plenty of water today," Victoria said, reaching for the special pitcher. "She's been having headaches lately, and Dr. Harrison says hydration is very important for her condition." Elena watched as Victoria poured a large glass of water from the pitcher and added what looked like a clear, tasteless powder before stirring it carefully. "Of course, Mrs. Whitmore," Elena managed to say, though her heart was beating fast. Victoria carried the glass upstairs to Bella's room, and Elena was left alone with her growing suspicions. Everything was starting to make a terrible kind of sense. If someone was drugging Bella's water to keep her from speaking, then her mute condition was completely artificial. Elena felt overwhelmed by the implications of what she was beginning to understand. If she was right, then Bella was being essentially poisoned by her own parents to maintain some kind of secret. But what secret could be so important that they would sacrifice their daughter's voice for it? She thought about Richard's words from the previous night. Our entire family fortune, our reputation, everything depends on her staying exactly as she is. What could Bella possibly know that would threaten the family's wealth and reputation? Elena realized she was in an impossible situation. She couldn't go to the police without proof, and she couldn't get proof without putting herself and possibly Bella in danger. But she also couldn't continue watching this sweet girl live a lie without doing something to help her. As she finished her work that day, Elena made a decision. She would find a way to learn the truth about Bella's condition, and if her suspicions were correct, she would find a way to help her speak again. Whatever the Whitmore family was hiding, it wasn't worth silencing their daughter forever. But Elena had no idea how dangerous her investigation would become, or how deep the Whitmore family's secrets really went. She was about to uncover a truth that would change not only Bella's life, but potentially destroy one of the most powerful families in the city. That night, as Elena sat in her apartment planning her Elena spent the next 3 days carefully observing the Whitmore family's routines, looking for patterns and opportunities to investigate further. She noticed that Victoria prepared Bella's special water every morning at exactly 8 o'clock, always using the same pitcher and always adding the mysterious powder when she thought no one was watching. Elena also observed that Bella seemed more alert and energetic in the mornings before drinking the water, but by afternoon she appeared drowsy and disconnected. This pattern had always been there, but Elena had previously attributed it to typical teenage behavior. On Thursday morning, Elena arrived at work 30 minutes early, hoping to examine the special water pitcher before the family woke up. The kitchen was empty and quiet as she carefully opened the refrigerator. The pitcher sat on the top shelf, about 3/4 full of what appeared to be ordinary water. Elena took a small clean spoon from the drawer and carefully collected a tiny sample of the water in a small container she had brought from home. If she could find a way to have it tested, she might learn what was being given to Bella without her knowledge. Just as Elena was returning the spoon to the drawer, she heard footsteps coming down the stairs. She quickly hid the sample container in her apron pocket and began preparing coffee, trying to look busy and normal. Victoria entered the kitchen wearing her silk robe and immediately went to the refrigerator. "Good morning, Elena," she said coolly. "You're here early today." "Good morning, Mrs. Whitmore. I wanted to get an early start on preparing for your dinner party tonight." Elena kept her voice steady and casual. Victoria retrieved the pitcher and began her usual routine of preparing Bella's water. Elena watched carefully as Victoria opened a small, unmarked bottle and shook what appeared to be a white powder into the water. The powder dissolved completely, leaving no trace of its presence. "Elena," Victoria said without looking up, "I've been meaning to tell you how pleased we are with your work. You've been very discreet about family matters." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Was this a warning? "Thank you, Mrs. Whitmore. I believe in respecting the family's privacy." Victoria smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm glad to hear that. Some people don't understand that wealthy families often have complicated situations that require careful handling." Before Elena could respond, Victoria took the glass of drugged water upstairs to Bella's room. Elena was left feeling shaken by the conversation. Victoria's words seemed to carry a subtle threat, as if she suspected Elena might know something she shouldn't. Later that morning, Elena was cleaning the second-floor hallway when she heard angry voices coming from Richard's study. The door was slightly ajar, and Elena could hear both Richard and Victoria speaking in heated whispers. "I don't like how that maid has been hanging around Isabella," Victoria was saying. "She's getting too friendly with her." "What exactly are you worried about?" Richard asked impatiently. "Isabella has been acting differently lately. More alert, more questioning. Yesterday she asked me why she needs so much water, and why her water tastes different from everyone else's." Elena's heart raced. Bella was beginning to notice the drugged water. That's not possible, Richard said. Dr. Harrison assured us that the medication prevents her from developing any awareness of her condition. Well, maybe it's time to increase the dosage, Victoria suggested coldly. Absolutely not. We can't risk making her seriously ill. The current amount keeps her vocal cords suppressed without causing obvious health problems. Elena covered her mouth to stifle a gasp. They were talking about suppressing Bella's vocal cords with medication. This meant Bella was perfectly capable of speaking, but drugs were preventing her from doing so. Then, what do you suggest? Victoria asked. We need to be more careful about who has access to her. Maybe it's time to let Elena go and find a new maid who won't be so attentive. Elena's blood ran cold. If she lost this job, she would have no way to help Bella or gather evidence about what was happening. She also realized that her suspicions had been noticed, which put her in potential danger. I'll take care of it, Victoria said with finality. Elena can finish out the week, and then we'll tell her we're cutting back on staff. Elena quickly moved away from the door and continued her cleaning, but her mind was racing. She had only a few more days before she would be forced to leave Bella in this terrible situation. Whatever she was going to do, she needed to act fast. That afternoon, Elena found Bella in the library as usual. The girl was sitting in her favorite chair by the window, reading and occasionally writing in her journal. Elena approached carefully, knowing that this conversation could be crucial. Hello, Bella, Elena said softly. How are you feeling today? Bella looked up and smiled, then wrote in her journal. A bit tired, like always. But I've been thinking about what you said about happiness hiding everywhere. Oh, and what did you discover? Bella wrote. I've been watching birds in the garden. They sing so freely, without thinking about it. I wonder what that would feel like. Elena felt her heart break. I imagine it would feel wonderful, she said gently. Then, taking a risk, she added, Bella, can I ask you something important? Bella nodded, looking curious. Have you ever wondered why you drink different water from everyone else in your family? Bella's expression changed immediately. She looked surprised and a little frightened. She wrote quickly. How did you know about that? I've noticed things while working here. Your mother prepares special water just for you every morning. Bella hesitated for a long moment, then wrote. She says it's vitamins to help with my condition. But lately, it tastes strange, and I feel sleepy after drinking it. Elena made a decision that would change both their lives. Bella, I need to tell you something, but it's very important that you don't let anyone know we've talked about this. Bella nodded seriously and wrote, I promise. I don't think your inability to speak is natural. I think someone is putting medicine in your water to prevent you from talking. Bella stared at Elena for several seconds, her face going through a range of emotions. Shock, disbelief, and then something that looked like recognition. She wrote frantically, but why would someone do that? Why would my parents want to keep me from speaking? I don't know yet, Elena admitted, but I'm going to find out. In the meantime, I need you to be very careful. Don't let anyone know that you suspect anything. Bella wrote, What should I do about the water? Elena thought carefully about this. Can you pretend to drink it, but actually pour it out when no one is looking? Maybe into a plant or sink. I can try, Bella wrote. But what if they notice I'm not getting sleepy like usual? Then you'll have to pretend to be tired. Can you do that? Bella nodded, though she looked scared. She wrote, Elena, I'm frightened. If what you're saying is true, then everything I believed about myself is a lie. Elena reached out and gently touched Bella's hand. I know this is scary, but if I'm right, it also means you're not broken or defective. It means you're perfectly normal, and someone has been stealing your voice from you. Tears formed in Bella's eyes as she wrote. Could I really speak if I stopped drinking the water? I think so, Elena said softly. But we need to be careful. If your parents realize what we're doing, they might do something to stop us. Bella wiped her eyes and wrote with determination, I want to try. I want to know the truth. That evening, Elena went home with the water sample she had collected, determined to find someone who could test it for her. She remembered that her neighbor Carlos worked as a lab technician at the local hospital. If she could convince him to help without asking too many questions, she might be able to learn exactly what was in Bella's water. Elena knocked on Carlos's door, rehearsing what she would say. Carlos was a kind man in his 50s who had always been friendly to Elena since she moved into the building. Elena, what a nice surprise, Carlos said when he opened the door. Come in, come in. Thank you, Carlos. I hope I'm not bothering you. But I need a favor. Of course, anything I can help with. Elena pulled out the small container of water. I need to know what's in this water sample, but I can't go through official channels. It's complicated. Carlos looked concerned. This isn't anything illegal, is it? No, nothing like that. I think someone might be drugging a young girl without her knowledge, and I need proof before I can go to the authorities. Carlos's expression became serious. That's a very serious accusation, Elena. I know. That's why I need to be sure before I do anything. Carlos studied her face for a moment, then nodded. Give me the sample. I can run some tests tomorrow night after my shift. But, Elena, if this is what you think it is, you need to be very careful. People who would drug a child are capable of much worse. Elena felt a chill at his words, but she knew he was right. I'll be careful. Thank you so much, Carlos. The next morning, Elena arrived at work to find the Whitmore household in an unusually tense mood. Victoria was on the phone in the sitting room, speaking in hushed but agitated tones, while Richard paced back and forth in his study. Elena began her usual cleaning routine, but she kept her ears open for any information about what was causing the family's distress. As she was dusting the hallway, she overheard part of Victoria's phone conversation. No, you listen to me. We've paid you very well over the years to keep quiet about this. If you're having second thoughts now, remember what happened to the last person who tried to expose us. That's right. Dr. Harrison learned to keep his mouth shut, and so will you. Elena felt ice-cold fear wash over her. Victoria was threatening someone, and the mention of what happened to the last person sounded ominous. Elena realized that whatever secret the Whitmores were keeping, they had already silenced other people who tried to reveal it. Later that morning, Elena found Bella in the garden, sitting on a bench under a large oak tree. The girl looked paler than usual and kept glancing nervously toward the house. How are you today? Elena asked, sitting beside her on the bench. Bella wrote, strange things are happening. My mother was very insistent that I drink extra water this morning. She stood there and watched me drink 2 full glasses. Elena's heart sank. If Victoria was increasing Bella's drug intake, it might mean she suspected something. Did you manage to avoid drinking any of it? Elena asked quietly. Bella wrote, some, but not all. I feel very sleepy now, but I'm fighting it. Elena could see that Bella was indeed struggling to stay alert. Her eyelids kept drooping, and her hand movements were slower than usual. Bella, I think your mother might suspect that you're not drinking all your water. We need to be extra careful. Bella wrote shakily. I heard my parents talking last night. They mentioned Dr. Harrison and something about increasing the treatment. Elena, I'm scared. Elena felt panic rising in her chest. If the Whitmores were planning to increase Bella's medication, it could be dangerous for her health. They needed to act faster than Elena had planned. Listen to me, Elena said urgently but quietly. I have someone testing your water to find out exactly what's in it. But I think we need to try something sooner. Tonight, when everyone is asleep, can you meet me in the kitchen? I want to see if you can make any sounds when the medication wears off. Bella looked frightened but determined. She wrote, what time? 2 in the morning. Can you stay awake that long? I'll try, Bella wrote. But what if someone catches us? We'll have to risk it. If your parents are planning to increase your medication, we might not get another chance. That evening passed agonizingly slowly for Elena. She went home as usual, but returned to the Whitmore mansion at 1:30 in the morning, using her key to enter through the servants' entrance. The house was dark and quiet as she made her way to the kitchen. Bella was already there, waiting in the darkness. She looked exhausted but determined. How do you feel? Elena whispered. Bella held up her journal, but it was too dark to read. Instead, she gestured that she felt tired but more alert than usual. Okay, Elena said softly. I want you to try to make a sound. Any sound, even just a whisper. Bella looked nervous but nodded. She opened her mouth and tried to speak. At first, nothing happened. Then, Elena heard the faintest whisper of breath, followed by what sounded like a very quiet ah sound. Both Elena and Bella froze in amazement. Bella's eyes widened in shock, and she tried again. This time, a soft mmm sound emerged from her throat. Elena had to cover her mouth to keep from crying out in excitement. Bella could make sounds. After 16 years of silence, her voice was still there, just suppressed by whatever drugs she had been given. Bella grabbed Elena's arm and tried to whisper something, but only soft vowel sounds came out. It was clear that years of medication had weakened her vocal cords, but they weren't permanently damaged. Suddenly, they heard footsteps upstairs. Someone was moving around on the second floor. "Go back to your room," Elena whispered urgently. "Practice making quiet sounds when you're alone, but don't let anyone hear you. We'll talk tomorrow." Bella nodded and quickly left the kitchen. Elena waited a few minutes before leaving through the servant's entrance, her heart pounding with excitement and fear. She had proof now that Bella could make sounds, which meant her suspicions were correct. But she also knew they were running out of time. If the Whitmores increased Bella's medication or decided to remove Elena from the household, their window of opportunity would close. The next morning, Elena arrived at work to find Victoria waiting for her in the kitchen with a stern expression on her face. "Elena," Victoria said coldly, "I've been reviewing our household needs, and we've decided that we no longer require your services." Elena's heart dropped, but she tried to remain calm. "May I ask why, Mrs. Whitmore?" "We're simply cutting back on staff. Your final day will be today. You'll receive 2 weeks severance pay." Elena knew this was a lie. Victoria was removing her because she had become suspicious about Elena's interest in Bella. "I understand," Elena said quietly. "I'll finish my duties today and collect my things." Carlos's voice was grim when he called Elena that evening. "You need to sit down for this," he said without any pleasantries. That water sample contained a powerful muscle relaxant called pancuronium bromide, mixed with a mild sedative. "Elena, this stuff is used in hospitals during surgery to paralyze patients temporarily." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. "Paralyze. It specifically targets the muscles used for speech and breathing. In the dosage you found, it wouldn't affect breathing, but it would make speaking impossible. Elena, whoever is giving this to that girl is essentially paralyzing her vocal cords every day." Elena sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the confirmation of her worst fears. How long would the effects last? With daily dosing like this, probably 24 hours. But, Elena, this is extremely dangerous. Long-term use of this medication could cause permanent damage to her throat muscles and nervous system. You need to get this girl medical help immediately. "I've been fired from my job," Elena said quietly. "I can't get close to her anymore." "Then, you need to go to the police right now," Carlos said urgently. "This is attempted murder, Elena, or at least serious assault. This medication is only supposed to be used in controlled medical settings." After hanging up with Carlos, Elena sat in her small apartment trying to process everything she had learned. The Whitmores weren't just keeping Bella from speaking. They were slowly poisoning her with dangerous paralytic drugs. But she still didn't understand why. Elena knew that going to the police would be difficult without more evidence. The Whitmores were wealthy and influential, while she was just a fired maid with a story that sounded unbelievable. She needed more proof and a better understanding of what the family was hiding. The next morning, Elena decided to visit the public library to research the Whitmore family history. If Bella's voice posed such a threat to their wealth and reputation, there had to be something in their past that explained it. At the library, Elena spent hours reading old newspaper articles and business records about Richard Whitmore's rise to fortune. Most of the articles painted him as a brilliant entrepreneur who had built his technology company from nothing. But as Elena dug deeper into older archives, she found a story that made her heart stop. 20 years ago, Richard Whitmore had been involved in a major corporate scandal. He had been accused of stealing trade secrets from his business partner, a man named James Chun, and using those secrets to build his own competing company. James Chun had died in a suspicious car accident just before he was scheduled to testify in court against Richard. Without Chun's testimony, the case had been dismissed for lack of evidence. But what caught Elena's attention was a small detail mentioned in only one article. James Chun had been married to Victoria Whitmore before her marriage to Richard. Victoria had been James's wife when he died, and she had inherited all of his assets and business interests. Elena realized that Victoria had married Richard shortly after her first husband's death, combining their resources to build the Whitmore fortune. If James Chin's death hadn't been an accident, then both Richard and Victoria could be guilty of murder. But what did this have to do with Bella? Elena continued reading and found her answer in a birth announcement from 16 years ago. Isabella Whitmore had been born exactly 9 months after James Chin's death. Elena did the math and realized something shocking. If Victoria had been pregnant when James died, there was a possibility that Bella was actually James Chin's daughter, not Richard's. Elena's mind raced with the implications. If Bella was James Chin's biological daughter, she could potentially inherit his business interests and assets. She might even have legal claim to the technology patents that Richard had allegedly stolen. No wonder the Whitmores wanted to keep her silent. If Bella ever spoke up and learned the truth about her parentage, she could destroy everything they had built. But Elena needed proof of Bella's true parentage, and that would require DNA testing. She also needed to find a way to communicate with Bella without being able to access the Whitmore mansion. Elena spent the next 2 days watching the mansion from a distance, learning Bella's routines, and looking for opportunities to make contact. She discovered that Bella often walked in the garden behind the mansion in the early evenings, always alone, and always within view of the kitchen windows where Victoria could watch her. On Wednesday evening, Elena waited behind the garden fence until Bella appeared for her usual walk. When Bella was near the fence and out of sight from the house, Elena whispered her name. Bella turned in surprise and saw Elena crouched behind the garden gate. Her face lit up with relief and happiness. She quickly looked around to make sure no one was watching, then approached the fence. "I was so worried about you," Elena whispered. "Are you okay?" Bella nodded and pulled out a small piece of paper from her pocket. She had written, "They made me drink extra water after you left. I feel terrible all the time now, and they're watching me constantly." "I found out what's in your water," Elena said urgently. "It's a paralytic drug that affects your vocal cords. Bella, you're being poisoned." Bella's eyes widened in horror. She wrote quickly on another piece of paper, "Why would they do this to me?" Elena looked around to make sure they weren't being observed, then said, "I think I know why, but it's complicated. Bella, I need to ask you something important. Do you know anything about your birth? Were you adopted or born to your parents naturally?" Bella looked confused but wrote, "They've always said I'm their biological daughter. What? I found old newspaper articles about your family. Before your mother married Richard, she was married to a man named James Chin. He died right around the time you were born." Bella stared at Elena with growing understanding. She wrote, "You think James Chin might be my real father? It's possible. And if he is, that would explain why your parents want to keep you from speaking. James Chin was Richard's business partner before he died. If you're his daughter, you might have legal rights to his business and money." Bella looked overwhelmed by this information. She wrote, "How can we find out the truth? We need a DNA test, but that's complicated. Right now, the most important thing is getting you away from that drugged water. Have you been able to avoid drinking any of it?" Bella wrote, "A little, but it's hard. They watch me so closely now, and I think the doctor is coming tomorrow to adjust my treatment." Elena felt panic rise in her chest. "Bella, listen to me carefully. If Dr. Harrison increases your medication, it could permanently damage your vocal cords or even hurt you seriously. We need to get you help immediately. What can we do?" Bella wrote desperately. Elena made a decision that would put both of them in danger. "Tomorrow morning, when you're supposed to see Dr. Harrison, I want you to pretend to be sick. Really sick, like you need to go to the hospital. Can you do that?" Bella nodded, though she looked scared. "When they take you to the hospital, tell the doctors there that you think you're being poisoned. Ask them to test your blood for pancuronium bromide. That's the name of the drug they're giving you. But what if my parents stop me from talking to the doctors? In a hospital, they're required to speak with you privately if you request it. Tell them you feel unsafe at home and that you think someone is drugging you. They'll have to investigate." Bella wrote, "What about you? Won't you get in trouble for helping me?" Elena smiled sadly. "Probably. But, Bella, you deserve to have your voice. You deserve to know the truth about who you are. I'm willing to take the risk if you are." Bella thought for a moment, then wrote with determination, "Yes, I want to try." They quickly arranged a signal system. If Bella needed to contact Elena urgently, she would hang a red scarf from her bedroom window. If Elena saw the scarf, she would know to come to the garden fence that evening. As they prepared to separate, Bella wrote one more note. Elena, what if they're right? What if I really can't speak, even without the medicine? Then, we'll deal with that when we know for sure, Elena said gently. But, Bella, last week in the kitchen, you made sounds. Your voice is there. It's just been hidden from you. Trust yourself. That night, Elena barely slept. She was asking a 16-year-old girl to confront her parents and potentially put herself in danger. But Elena also knew that if they didn't act soon, Bella might never get another chance to discover the truth. The next morning, Elena positioned herself across the street from the Whitmore mansion, watching from her car. She saw Dr. Harrison arrive at 9 o'clock, carrying his medical bag and walking with the confident stride of someone who had been getting away with something terrible for years. At 10:30, Elena saw an ambulance arrive at the mansion. Her heart raced as she watched paramedics rush into the house with a stretcher. Minutes later, they emerged carrying Bella, who appeared to be unconscious or seriously ill. Elena followed the ambulance to St. Mary's Hospital, where she waited in the parking lot for any sign of what was happening inside. After what felt like hours, Elena decided to risk going into the hospital to see if she could learn anything about Bella's condition. At the information desk, Elena asked if she could visit Isabella Whitmore, claiming to be a family friend. I'm sorry, the receptionist said, but Miss Whitmore is in the emergency department and can only be visited by immediate family members. Elena was about to leave when she heard a commotion coming from the direction of the emergency department. She could hear Victoria Whitmore's voice raised in anger, demanding to speak with someone in charge. Elena moved closer and heard Victoria saying, "That's completely unacceptable. I am her mother, and I demand to be present for any questioning. This is harassment of a sick child." A calm male voice responded, "Mrs. Whitmore, your daughter has specifically requested to speak with our staff privately. As she's 16 years old, she has the legal right to make that request. We also have preliminary blood work that raises some serious concerns." Elena's heart leaped with hope. Bella had followed through with the plan, and the hospital had found evidence of the drugs in her blood. What kind of concerns? Richard Whitmore's voice joined the conversation. Our daughter has a legitimate medical condition that requires specialized treatment. Mr. Whitmore, we've found evidence of pancuronium bromide in your daughter's system. This is a paralytic agent that's only used in surgical settings. We need to understand how and why your daughter was exposed to this medication. Elena heard Victoria gasp, then quickly recover. That's impossible. Our daughter only takes vitamins and supplements prescribed by Dr. Harrison. Speaking of Dr. Harrison, the hospital doctor said, "We've been trying to reach him to discuss your daughter's case, but his office says he's unavailable. Do you have another way to contact him?" There was a moment of silence. Then, Richard said stiffly, "We'll need to consult with our lawyers before answering any more questions." Elena realized that the Whitmores were about to try to remove Bella from the hospital before she could tell her story to the authorities. Elena knew she had to act fast. She approached the reception desk again and asked to speak with someone about suspected child abuse. The receptionist immediately directed her to a social worker named Ms. Patricia Williams. "I have information about Isabella Whitmore, the girl who was just brought in," Elena told Ms. Williams urgently. "I believe she's been systematically poisoned by her parents to prevent her from speaking." Ms. Williams looked surprised. "That's a very serious accusation. What makes you believe this?" Elena quickly explained everything she had observed and discovered, including the water testing results and her research into the family's history. She also told Ms. Williams about the previous night's conversation with Bella. "Do you have any evidence to support these claims?" Ms. Williams asked. Elena pulled out the small container with the remaining water sample and Carlos's written test results. "This is from the water they've been giving her daily. It contains the same paralytic drug that's in her blood now." Ms. Williams examined the papers carefully, then made a phone call. "Security? I need immediate protection for the minor patient Isabella Whitmore in emergency room 3. Her parents are not to remove her from the hospital until we complete a full investigation." Elena felt a wave of relief wash over her. Bella was safe for now, but Elena knew the real battle was just beginning. "Ms. Martinez," Ms. Williams said after hanging up the phone, "you may have saved this girl's life. But I need you to understand that you'll need to testify about everything you've told me. The Whitmores are a powerful family, and they'll fight these accusations aggressively. I understand, Elena said without hesitation. That girl deserves to have her voice back. As Elena left the hospital, she saw Richard and Victoria Whitmore in heated discussion with several men in expensive suits who were obviously lawyers. They were clearly preparing for a legal battle. But Elena felt hopeful for the first time in weeks. Bella was safe in the hospital, the truth was beginning to come out, and the medical evidence was undeniable. Now they just had to prove why the Whitmores had been willing to poison their own daughter to keep her silent. The hardest part was still ahead, but Elena was determined to see justice done for Bella, no matter what it cost her personally. That evening, Elena received a phone call that would see Elena's hands trembled as she held the phone, barely able to believe what she was hearing. Bella's voice was soft and hoarse from years of disuse, but it was real and beautiful. Bella, oh my God, you can speak, Elena whispered, tears streaming down her face. How do you feel? Scared, Bella admitted, her voice getting slightly stronger, but also free. Elena, I remember things now. Things from when I was very small. I think I used to speak normally until I was about 4 years old. Elena felt her heart racing. What do you remember? I remember calling someone daddy, who wasn't Richard. A man with dark hair who used to read to me in Chinese. And I remember the day everything changed. The day I stopped talking. What happened that day? Bella's voice became quieter, filled with remembered fear. A man came to our house. He had papers with him, and he was arguing with Richard and my mother. I was hiding at the top of the stairs, listening. The man said something about me being James Chen's daughter and that I had rights to his company. Elena's breath caught. Do you remember what happened next? Richard got very angry. He grabbed the man and... Elena, I think Richard hurt him. Maybe killed him. I was so scared that I started screaming, and that's when Richard looked up and saw me watching. Bella's voice broke slightly. The next day, Dr. Harrison came to the house for the first time. He gave me some medicine that made me feel sleepy, and when I woke up, I couldn't make any sounds anymore. Elena felt sick to her stomach. Bella, you witnessed a murder, and they've been drugging you all these years to keep you from telling anyone. The doctors here want to do more tests, Bella said. They said the drug in my blood could have caused permanent damage if I'd kept taking it. Elena, they were slowly killing me to protect their secret. Where are your parents now? They left when the police arrived. Their lawyers tried to take me home, but the doctors refused to discharge me. I'm officially under protective custody until the investigation is complete. Elena felt overwhelming relief. Are you safe there? Yes. There are police officers outside my room, and Ms. Williams, the social worker, says I don't have to go back to that house ever again if I don't want to. What happens next? I have to give a formal statement to the police tomorrow. Elena, will you be there with me? I don't think I can do this alone. Of course, Elena said without hesitation. I'll be there for whatever you need. After ending the call, Elena sat in her apartment, feeling a mixture of triumph and dread. Bella was free and could speak, but now they were both about to face the full power of the Whitmore family's wealth and influence. Elena knew that Richard and Victoria would not give up easily. The next morning, Elena arrived at the police station to find it swarming with reporters and news vans. Word had leaked about the investigation into the Whitmore family, and the media was calling it the biggest scandal to hit the city's elite in decades. Detective Sarah Rodriguez met Elena in the lobby. Ms. Martinez, thank you for coming. Isabella specifically requested that you be present during her interview. How is she doing? Remarkably well, considering what she's been through. Her voice is getting stronger by the hour, and her memory is becoming clearer as the drugs leave her system. We've also had some interesting developments overnight. What kind of developments? Detective Rodriguez led Elena down a hallway to a private room. Dr. Harrison was arrested at the airport last night, trying to flee the country. When we searched his office, we found detailed records of Isabella's treatment going back 16 years. He's been documenting every dose of paralytic he gave her, along with notes about maintaining her silence. Elena felt a surge of satisfaction. Is he talking? He's trying to negotiate a plea deal in exchange for his testimony against the Whitmores. Apparently, Richard has been paying him millions over the years to keep Isabella drugged and silent. They entered a comfortable room where Bella was waiting with Ms. Williams. The transformation in the girl was remarkable. Without the influence of daily drugs, her eyes were bright and alert, and she sat up straight with a confidence Elena had never seen before. "Elena," Bella said, her voice much stronger than it had been on the phone. She stood up and hugged Elena tightly. "Thank you for saving me." "You saved yourself," Elena replied, hugging her back. "You were brave enough to trust me and take the risk." Detective Rodriguez turned on a recording device. "Isabella, are you ready to tell us everything you remember about your life at the Whitmore mansion?" For the next 3 hours, Bella spoke steadily and clearly about years of systematic drugging, isolation, and deception. She described how she had been told she was born mute, how Dr. Harrison had convinced her that her condition was permanent, and how her parents had watched her struggle with a disability they had artificially created. But the most damning part of her testimony concerned the memory that had returned to her in the hospital. The night she witnessed Richard Whitmore kill a man who had come to claim her as James Chin's daughter. "I was 4 years old," Bella said, her voice steady despite the horror of what she was describing. "The man had pictures of me as a baby with James Chun. He said James was my real father and that Richard had stolen his business after murdering him. Richard grabbed the man, and I saw him hit him with something heavy. The man fell down and didn't get up again." Detective Rodriguez leaned forward. "What happened to the man's body?" "Richard and my mother wrapped him in a carpet and carried him down to the basement. I never saw him again, but I heard them talking about disposing of the problem the next day. And that's when Dr. Harrison first came to your house." "Yes, the very next morning. Richard told me that I was very sick and needed special medicine to help me. Dr. Harrison gave me an injection, and when I woke up, I couldn't speak anymore. They told me I had been born that way and that I must have imagined being able to talk before." Elena felt tears running down her face as she listened to Bella's story. This brave girl had been living with the trauma of witnessing a murder while being systematically poisoned by her own parents for 12 years. "Isabella," Detective Rodriguez said gently, "we've been investigating your birth records and family history based on the information Ms. Martinez provided. Would you be willing to take a DNA test to determine your biological parentage?" "Yes," Bella said immediately. "I want to know the truth about who I really am." After the DNA sample was collected, Elena and Bella were moved to a secure waiting area while the police processed the information from the interview. "Elena," Bella said quietly, "I've been thinking about something. If James Chun was my real father, and if Richard stole his business, then technically I might be the rightful owner of Whitmore Technologies, right?" Elena nodded slowly. "That's possible. James Chin's patents and business interests would have passed to his heirs when he died. So Richard and Victoria have been stealing from me my entire life, not just my voice, but my inheritance too." "It looks that way." Bella was quiet for a moment, then said with determination, "I want them to pay for what they've done. Not just to me, but to James Chun and to anyone else they might have hurt." That afternoon, Detective Rodriguez returned with news that would blow the case wide open. "We've found the basement," she announced. Acting on Isabella's testimony, we obtained a search warrant for the Whitmore mansion. We found human remains buried beneath the basement floor, along with personal effects belonging to a man named Thomas Morrison. Bella gasped. "That's the name." Thomas Morrison was the man who came to the house that night. "I remember now." Thomas Morrison was a private investigator hired by James Chin's brother in Taiwan to look into Chin's death and locate any surviving family members. He had discovered Isabella's existence and had come to confront the Whitmores with evidence that Richard had murdered James Chun. Elena felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. So the Whitmores killed Thomas Morrison to keep him from exposing the original murder of James Chun. Exactly. And they drugged Isabella because she was the only witness to Morrison's murder, and because she was also James Chin's heir who could challenge their ownership of his business. "Where are Richard and Victoria now?" Bella asked. "They've disappeared. Their lawyers claim not to know their whereabouts, but we have international alerts out for them. They can't hide forever, especially with the media attention this case is getting." That evening, Elena and Bella were staying at a safe house provided by the police when they turned on the news to see their story dominating every channel. In breaking news tonight, the anchor announced, the billionaire Whitmore family is wanted for questioning in connection with multiple murders and the systematic drugging of their own daughter to prevent her from speaking. 16-year-old Isabella Whitmore, who was believed to be mute from birth, has spoken publicly for the first time, revealing shocking details about years of abuse. The news showed footage of the police searching the Whitmore mansion, removing evidence, and carrying out what appeared to be human remains. DNA testing has confirmed that Isabella Whitmore is the biological daughter of James Chun, the tech entrepreneur who died under suspicious circumstances 20 years ago. If these allegations are proven true, Isabella could be the rightful owner of what is now known as Whitmore Technologies, a company valued at over $3 billion. Bella turned to Elena with wonder in her eyes. $3 billion? I can't even imagine that much money. It's not really about the money, Elena said thoughtfully. It's about justice for your real father, and for Thomas Morrison. And it's about you getting back everything that was stolen from you. Elena, I've been thinking about something else. When this is all over, when I have control of the company, I want to do something good with it. Maybe start a foundation to help other children who are being abused or silenced. Elena smiled with pride. Despite everything she had been through, Bella's first instinct was to use her newfound power to help others. I think that's a beautiful idea, Elena said. Your father would be proud of you. Which father? Bella asked with a sad smile. I never really knew James Chun. And Richard? Well, he was never really my father at all. Elena thought about this. I think any good person who raised you would be proud of how strong and compassionate you've turned out to be. You've survived something that would have broken most people, and you're still thinking about how to help others. That night, Elena lay awake thinking about how much their lives had changed in just a few days. A week ago, Bella had been a silent prisoner in her own home, and Elena had been a maid who suspected something was wrong but didn't know how to help. Now Bella had found her voice and was on the verge of claiming her rightful inheritance, while Elena had become the key witness in one of the biggest criminal cases in the city's history. But Elena knew their victory wasn't complete yet. Richard and Victoria Whitmore were still free, and they were wealthy enough to disappear permanently if they weren't caught soon. There was also the question of how much of Whitmore Technology's success was built on stolen ideas from James Chun, and how many other crimes the family might have committed over the years. The next morning brought news that would change everything once again. Detective Rodriguez called Elena with an update that made her heart race. We've arrested Richard Whitmore, she said. He was trying to access offshore bank accounts in the Cayman Islands. But, Elena, there's something else. Victoria Whitmore was found dead in a hotel room in Mexico City. It appears to be suicide, but we're investigating. Elena felt a complex mixture of emotions. Part of her was relieved that the people who had hurt Bella could no longer harm her, but another part of her felt sad that Victoria had chosen death over facing the consequences of her actions. How is Bella taking the news? Elena asked. She's processing it. I think part of her is relieved, but she's also dealing with the fact that the people she thought were her parents are both gone now. Elena realized that despite everything Richard and Victoria had done to Bella, they had been the only parents she had ever known. Their loss would be complicated and painful for her to work through. Can I see her? Yes, please. I think she needs you right now. When Elena arrived at the safe house, she found Bella sitting quietly in the garden, staring at nothing in particular. How are you feeling? Elena asked, sitting beside her. Empty, Bella said softly. I thought I would feel happy when they were caught, but instead I just feel sad. They did terrible things to me, but they were still the only family I ever had. Elena nodded understandingly. It's okay to feel sad, even about people who hurt you. You're grieving the parents you thought you had, and the childhood you should have had. Elena, what happens to me now? I have no family left. Elena had been thinking about this exact question. Well, you're 16, so you'll probably have a guardian appointed by the court until you're 18. But, Bella, you also have something else now. What? Elena smiled gently. You have your voice. And you have choices. For the first time in your life, you get to decide what kind of person you want to be and what you want to do with your life. 2 years later, Elena stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of the executive office on the top floor of Chin Technologies, watching the city spread out below. The company that had once been called Whitmore Technologies now bore its rightful name, honoring the man whose work and vision had been stolen so many years ago. "Elena, the board meeting is starting," came a confident voice from behind her. Elena turned to see Bella, now 18 years old and legally in control of her inheritance, dressed in a sharp business suit but still wearing the warm smile that had captured Elena's heart from their first meeting in the Whitmore mansion. The transformation in Bella over the past 2 years had been remarkable. Not only had her voice grown strong and clear, but she had thrown herself into learning about business, technology, and the company that was rightfully hers. She had also insisted on changing her name legally from Isabella Whitmore to Isabella Chun, reclaiming her father's identity along with his legacy. "How do you feel about today?" Elena asked, straightening Bella's collar in a maternal gesture that had become natural to both of them. "Nervous," Bella admitted, "but good nervous. Today we finally announced the Chun Foundation, and I get to honor my father's memory the way it should have been done years ago." Elena smiled with pride. The Chun Foundation was Bella's idea, a non-profit organization dedicated to helping children who were victims of abuse, trafficking, or forced silence. They had spent months planning it, using part of Bella's inheritance to fund programs that would give voice to the voiceless. As they walked toward the boardroom, Elena reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. The legal battles had been intense and exhausting. Even with overwhelming evidence of the Whitmore's crimes, their lawyers had fought every step of the way to protect the family's assets. Dr. Harrison's testimony had been crucial. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he had provided detailed records of Bella's drugging, along with information about other crimes the Whitmores had committed over the years. It turned out that Bella wasn't their only victim. 3 other business partners had mysteriously disappeared over the past 20 years, all of them people who had posed threats to Richard's business empire. The media coverage had been intense. Bella's story had captured the world's attention, and she had become a symbol of resilience and justice. Documentary filmmakers, book authors, and journalists had all sought interviews, but Bella had been selective about sharing her story. She wanted to make sure her voice was used to help others, not just to satisfy curiosity about her ordeal. Elena had indeed become Bella's legal guardian, and later, when Bella turned 18, she had asked Elena to officially adopt her. The adoption ceremony had been small and private, attended only by a few close friends and Carlos, who had become like an uncle to both of them. When the judge declared them legally mother and daughter, both Elena and Bella had cried tears of joy. The boardroom was filled with executives, lawyers, and foundation directors as Bella took her seat at the head of the large conference table. Elena sat beside her, now serving as the chief operations officer of both Chin Technologies and the Chin Foundation. "Good morning, everyone," Bella began, her voice carrying the authority that came from knowing she was exactly where she belonged. "Today marks an important milestone in our company's history. We're not just announcing the launch of the Chin Foundation. We're also implementing new policies that will make Chun Technologies a leader in ethical business practices and child protection." Over the past 2 years, Bella had worked tirelessly to transform the company culture. She had instituted strict background checks for all employees, created anonymous reporting systems for any suspected abuse or misconduct, and partnered with organizations that fought human trafficking and child exploitation. "As many of you know," Bella continued, "my father James Chun was a visionary who believed that technology should be used to make the world better, not just to make profits. For too many years, his vision was corrupted by people who cared only about money and power. Today, we return to his original mission." Elena watched with amazement as Bella outlined the foundation's plans. They would fund safe houses for children escaping abusive situations, provide speech therapy and medical care for children with communication disorders, and support legal advocates who fought for children's rights in court. "We're also announcing a new technology initiative," Bella said, clicking to the next slide of her presentation. "Chin Technologies will develop communication devices for children who cannot speak, whether due to medical conditions, trauma, or abuse. These devices will be provided free of charge to anyone who needs them. The room erupted in applause. Elena felt tears of pride welling up in her eyes. Bella was using her wealth and influence exactly as she had promised that day in the safe house, to help others who were suffering in silence. After the meeting, Elena and Bella walked through the company's research and development labs, where teams of engineers were working on the new communication devices. They had also hired several survivors of abuse to consult on the projects, ensuring that the technology would truly meet the needs of the people it was designed to help. Bella, Elena said as they watched a team testing a tablet device that could translate sign language into spoken words, "Your father would be so proud of what you've accomplished." "Both of my fathers," Bella replied with a smile. "James Chin gave me the foundation to build on. But you gave me the courage to speak up and fight for what's right." Elena hugged her daughter, still amazed by how much their lives had changed. "I think we gave each other courage." That evening, they attended a gala dinner to officially launch the Chin Foundation. The event was held at the city's most prestigious hotel, and hundreds of supporters, business leaders, and activists had gathered to show their support. Elena watched from the audience as Bella took the stage to give the evening's keynote speech. At 18, she commanded the room with a confidence and grace that would have seemed impossible just 2 years earlier. "Ladies and gentlemen," Bella began, "I want to tell you about a little girl who lost her voice when she was 4 years old and didn't find it again until she was 16. Elena smiled, knowing that Bella had decided to share more of her personal story tonight than ever before. "For 12 years, I lived in silence, believing that I was broken, that I was less than whole because I couldn't speak. But I wasn't broken. My voice had been stolen from me by people who were afraid of what I might say." The room was completely quiet as Bella continued. "Tonight, I want to honor not just my own journey from silence to voice, but the millions of children around the world who are still waiting for someone to hear them, to believe them, and to help them find their strength." Bella spoke about the power of speaking truth, about the responsibility that came with having a voice and a platform, and about the importance of listening to those whose society often ignored. "The Chin Foundation exists because I learned that having a voice isn't just about being able to speak," Bella said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "It's about using that voice to lift up others, to fight injustice, and to create a world where no child has to suffer in silence." The standing ovation that followed lasted for several minutes. Elena saw tears on the faces of many audience members, and she felt overwhelmed with pride for the young woman Bella had become. After the gala, Elena and Bella sat in their favorite coffee shop, the same one where Elena used to go after work during her days as a maid. It had become a tradition for them to come here whenever they needed to process big events in their lives. "How do you feel now that the foundation is officially launched?" Elena asked. "Grateful," Bella said immediately, "and determined." "Elena, I've been thinking about something." "What's that?" "I want to go back to the mansion where I grew up. I want to see it again, but this time as myself, not as their prisoner." Elena Bella was quiet for a moment, then said, "Elena, would you consider being my guardian? I know it's a lot to ask, but you're the only person who ever really cared about me." Elena felt her eyes fill with tears. "Bella, I would be honored. But are you sure? Being your guardian would be a big responsibility, and your life is about to become very complicated with the inheritance and legal issues." "I'm sure," Bella said firmly. "Elena, you gave me back my voice. You saved my life. I can't think of anyone I'd rather have as family." Elena reached over and hugged Bella tightly. Then, "Yes, absolutely yes. We'll face whatever comes next together." As they sat together in the garden, Elena realized that their story was far from over. There would be legal battles to fight, a company to reclaim, and years of healing to work through. But they would face it all together as family. Bella had found her voice, and Elena had found a daughter she never expected. Together, they were about to change everything. And everything once again. The voice on the other end was shaky but unmistakably real. "Elena," the voice whispered. "It's Bella. I can speak." For the first time in 16 years, Isabella Whitmore had found her voice. And she was ready to tell the world exactly what she had discovered about her family's darkest secrets. Victoria nodded curtly, and left the kitchen. Elena stood there feeling devastated. She was being forced to abandon Bella just when they were making progress. But Elena Martinez was not someone who gave up easily. If the Whitmores thought they could silence their daughter and intimidate anyone who tried to help her, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. Elena spent her last day at the mansion carefully planning her next moves. She might be losing her inside access to the household, but that didn't mean she was giving up on helping Bella find her voice. That evening, Carlos called Elena with the results of the water test. What he told her confirmed her worst fears and gave her the ammunition she needed to fight back against the Whitmore family's terrible secret. The real battle for Bella's freedom was just beginning. Next steps, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She checked her locks twice and closed all her curtains, wondering if her sudden interest in Bella had been noticed by the wrong people. Meanwhile, at the Whitmore mansion, Bella lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, feeling more confused than ever. She had been having strange dreams lately, dreams where she was speaking and laughing and singing. But every time she woke up and tried to make a sound, nothing would come out. Something was changing inside her, something she couldn't quite understand. And, for the first time in her life, she was beginning to question everything she had been told about her condition. The truth was closer than either Elena or Bella realized. But uncovering it would require courage, cleverness, and a willingness to risk everything for justice.